So last weekend on Sunday night, the Dallas Cowboys losing to the 49ers in pretty convincing fashion. I don't think the Niners are a great football team. Obviously, they're only 4-4. They still don't have McCaffrey, but Brock Purdy played very well. And I thought the Cowboys would win that game. I actually thought Dallas would be able to take advantage of an injured 49ers team, but Dak Prescott, clearly there is an intimidation factor there. I don't think Dak has ever beaten the 49ers, at least he hasn't this decade. Maybe before they got Garoppolo, he beat them, but the Niners seem to have Dallas's number, and maybe it's a Shanahan thing. Dallas continues to suffer without a run game. Dak is just floundering, and I hate to say it's not. Dak deserves blame. When I say Dak needs a run game, I'm not saying like, man, I feel bad for him. It's not that he needs it. He actually is not a good quarterback when he doesn't have a strong run game. He makes mistakes. You see the mistakes. He's throwing interceptions. He turns the ball over. He thinks he has to do too much. But this is what Dak has always been, right? We've seen him for 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is his ninth year in the league, and he still can't play well without a run game. That is on him at this point. Like, he has to be able to win a game when his team can't run the ball. And the fact that he can't, that says something about him, right? That's incriminating on Dak Prescott. It's not the other way around. So when I say Dak is floundering, I don't feel bad for him. He's had 9 years to figure it out. He still hasn't. The Niners started slow but had a great third quarter, and it looked like the game was wrapped up. To their credit, Dallas did fight back. They fought. They were down by 17, and they ended up losing by 6. And they had a chance to win it on the last drive. And of course, Dak threw an interception on the last drive, and didn't work out for them. Dallas is not a playoff team. They're not. They are probably closer to a 7-10 football team. I mean, looking at their schedule, they already have 4 losses. They've only played 7 games because they've had the bye. They still have to play Philadelphia twice. They still have to play the Washington Commanders twice. Best case scenario, they win. They split, I think, those games. They also have to play the Falcons, who are 5-3, the Texans, who are 6-3, the Bengals 3-5, but I think they're a good team. Tampa Bay will be tough as well. So Dallas they don't have a whole lot of layups left on this schedule. They have the Giants, and that's pretty much the only layup left. All the rest of their games are going to be tough. So even if they split the rest of their games and beat the Giants, that would put them as an 8-9 football team. And I think there's a chance they don't even split. I don't know if they split the rest of their games. I think that might be best case scenario between Philly twice, Washington twice, Houston, Atlanta, Tampa Bay, and Cincinnati. Those 8 games, I think the best case scenario is probably you beat Cincinnati, you beat Atlanta, and you split with Philly and the Commanders, probably lose to the Texans. I know they just lost to the Jets, but I think the Texans are pretty clearly the better team than Dallas, and probably lose to Tampa. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they can beat Tampa. Depends on, but Baker Mayfield, he's balling out, and Dak is not balling out. So, yeah, it's a rough season for Dallas. San Francisco, meanwhile, they're in a hard-fought race for that division, man. Cardinals, Rams, Seahawks, they're all 4 of those teams could win the division. Niners, of course, have the win over Seattle, but they lost to the Cardinals. So we'll see what happens with them. But, they're still in the mix at 4-4, and Brock Purdy continues to... I thought he played well against Dallas. And again, he's still missing weapons. I've said it before. I think the media is very unfair to Brock Purdy, and I say that as a Seahawks fan. I think the media is unfair to him. That's just my opinion on the matter with Brock Purdy. I think he doesn't get enough credit for what he does, and the minute he loses weapons, it's always taking away credit from him, and I feel like it's impossible to ask him to win all these games when he's missing Debo and Ayuk and CMC. He's finding ways to play well. And granted, Dallas, I don't think Dallas is that good, but Dallas was up 10-3, and then Brock Purdy and the 49ers went and scored 24 unanswered points between the end of the first half And in the third quarter, remember, Dallas went into halftime with a lead. They were led 10-6 at half. The Niners scored 3 touchdowns in the third quarter and were up 27-10. Final score 30-24 Niners. Another team that lost that probably should have won, the New York Jets. Man, that talk about a season in disarray. And what's funny is they ended up beating the Texans, but the loss to the Patriots, that's just, you can't lose to the Patriots like that. And Aaron Rodgers didn't even play terribly, but the Jets defense struggling, and the Patriots made the plays they needed to make, you know? And that's just, I mean, it's obviously it sucks for Aaron, but at this point, I think you have to admit the truth is that the Jets are not a good team. I'm ready to stop talking about the Jets, to be honest. I'm ready to stop talking about them. Of course, if they win games, we'll talk about them, but I don't think we need to really talk about every time they lose. It's just funny when they lose to these bad teams. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, Drake May didn't even play. He left the game with an injury in the first quarter. Jacoby Brissett was the guy in there, and credit to Jacoby because he's won both of their games. Drake May hasn't really finished a game that he's won yet. But the Jets are just, I don't know, like it feels like they keep adding pieces and they keep getting worse. Like they lost and then they fired Saleh. They got a new head coach. Like, oh yeah, we're fired up. Lost again. Then they traded for Devontae. It's like, okay, we got Devontae back. We're getting better. Lost again. Lost even worse, right? It was a close. Remember, those first 2 losses were close. The Minnesota loss, it was a one-score game. It was 23-17, and then the Buffalo was even closer than that, 23-20. After they lost to Buffalo by 3 points, they trade for Devontae Adams to play the Steelers. They get destroyed by the Steelers with Devontae. Then they get Hassan Riddick back, and they lose to the 1-win Patriots. I mean, it's a joke at this point because they keep on adding pieces. They got Devontae in the building. They got Hassan Riddick back. They got the new head coach. They got rid of Hackett calling plays. It feels like they're doing what they think is going to upgrade the team. They're making upgrades, and yet their losses are getting worse and worse, right? Losing by 6 to Minnesota, that's okay, right? Losing by 3 to Buffalo, that's acceptable. Losing by 17 to Pittsburgh was bad, and losing to the Patriots, no matter how close it was, you can't lose to the 1-win Patriots. That has to be a layup. That has to be a easy win. And of course they turned around and beat the Texans, and they're 3-6. Do they have life? Yeah, they don't really have life, because if they were 4-5 with a win over the Texans, that would be something, right? But at 3-6, I just don't think that there's anything left for the Texans. I don't think there's any hope left. Aaron has to retire at this point, because if he retires after this year, he can chalk it up to the ACL. He can say, look, I thought I was going to be able to be healthy, but I wasn't healthy, and I tried my best. I gave it my all, but it was just a lost season. If Aaron just does that, no one's going to remember this season. I've said this before. Like, remember Matt Ryan's last season when he went to Indianapolis, got hurt, was not good. They lost a bunch of games. I think they went 4-12. And he got benched, and then he got unbenched, then he got hurt, and then they fired their coach, and it was Jeff Saturday, and Sam Ellinger made a couple starts, and it was a mess, right? Remember that year? I barely remember it, and I think in about 5 years, nobody's going to remember it. Matt Ryan, whether or not he gets into the Hall of Fame, it's not because of that season, right? He'll get into the Hall of Fame if they decide to, because of his time in Atlanta. And if he doesn't get into the Hall of Fame, it's not because of that 1 year with the Colts. It's because they don't think what he did in Atlanta was good enough, right? Nobody's judging Matt Ryan for having an injury-riddled final season with a new team and a fired head coach. That's the same situation as Rodgers, right? Injuries. He's battling back from a brutal injury. He's old. Head coach got fired. There's a lot, new team, new city. There's a lot of similarities between this year for Rodgers and that year in Indianapolis for Matt Ryan. And I think that similarly, I think history will forget about this year for Rodgers if he just calls it quits. But if he keeps playing, if he keeps trying to succeed in New York, and he keeps struggling, that is when it starts to become a little more memorable. 2 years is a lot more than 1. 3 years is a lot more than 2. And so the more Rodgers does this, the more he's going to be judged for it. If you call it quits after 1 year, chalk it up to the ACL, you're going to be fine. It's not going to ruin your legacy. But if he keeps going, man, I worry about him. So I think this has to be his last season. At this point, it has to be. All right, let's talk Bucks Falcons. Tampa Bay losing another very emotional game to the Falcons. Baker Mayfield, I feel bad for him. I legitimately believe that Baker has been the second best quarterback in the NFL this season so far, behind Lamar Jackson. He is doing everything he can to carry this team, but without Mike Evans, without Chris Godwin, it's just tough on him, and his defense has not held up their end of the bargain. So Kirk and the Falcons are now in the driver's seat for that division. I love those cream uniforms, by the way. Can we talk about that? How clean are those cream Tampa Bay unis? They're amazing. But yeah, Kirk and the Falcons, man. I feel like there's a bit of an intimidation factor there now that the Bucks have lost to them twice. And the Falcons just offensively are on a roll. Both of these teams have very good offenses, but Baker deserves better. Man, he is balling out. So he's playing so well, aggressive, and yes, he throws picks. Yes, he makes mistakes, but he has been so good this season. He's accurate. He's hitting it. He leads the league in touchdowns. And unfortunately, he just ran into a Falcons team that was just a little bit better. I got this one wrong. I thought the Bucks would win. I thought it would be low scoring. I thought they'd lean on their run game. I thought Atlanta would maybe be a little overconfident, and I thought Tampa Bay was going to win, but instead, Falcons at 5-3, they are now in the driver's seat, and Tampa Bay at 4-4. It's going to get tough for them, because I'm not so sure if there's enough layups on that schedule for them to really make a run, and the NFC's tough. The NFC's a tough league. You know, they're trailing right now. The Eagles in the wild card, Washington, Chicago, the Packers. They're gonna have it's gonna be hard for them, I think, to break into the playoffs. They have the 49ers next. They'll probably lose. They'll be 4-5. Then the Giants and Panthers, Raiders. They can win those games, maybe get to 7-5. Chargers, Cowboys probably split 8-6, and then Panthers, Saints. So, you know, they could go 10-6 maybe. Well, they have the Chiefs as well. So they're probably, I feel like 10-7 is maybe their upper limits, because I think lose to the Chiefs, lose to the Niners, and then between Chargers and Cowboys, probably lose at least one of those games. And then, but I also think this is a team that could get upset. I mean, that New Orleans could upset this team, the Panthers. I don't think they get to 10 wins, to be honest, but I think 10 is probably their upper limit. So I don't think this is a playoff team anymore. And I feel bad for Baker because of that, because I think he deserves to be there in the dance. He's been really good. How about Jameis Winston beating the Ravens? How about that? The Browns seem to have Lamar's number a little bit. They beat him last year. Deshaun beat them last year. And famous Jameis Winston with the win. Deshaun had been just really struggling. He was 1-5 or 1-6. Jameis Winston, though, giving the Browns some life. I love how the NFL people overreact. I mean, they're not gonna make the playoffs. Let's take a chill pill on the Jameis Winston thing. Jameis is very up and down. He's a bit of a roller coaster. He'll have some great games. He'll have some bad games. Ultimately, I mean, they won that game because Jameis almost threw a pick, and the Ravens, Kyle Hamilton, dropped an interception that would have sealed the game. And then on the next play, Jameis threw a Hail Mary touchdown pass. I mean, come on, it was a fluky win, but it's cool. It's not good for the Browns, you know. But honestly, if I was them, I would probably start Dorian Thompson-Robinson, not because I think he's better than Jameis, but because Jameis is gonna have a couple fluky wins, and they're gonna miss out on getting a better draft pick. I understand. Don't play for the draft pick. Don't do everything for the draft pick. But you know what? You're 2-6. Your team is in last place in your division. You're not making the playoffs. So let's think about the future here. If Jameis goes 7-10, you're not getting that top 5 draft pick. Dorian Thompson-Robinson could easily go winless the rest of the way, and you could find yourself staring down the number one pick, but instead, and then you could draft Deshaun Watson's replacement potentially, but instead, I guess they're gonna try to win. Baltimore will be fine. Again, let's not freak out about Baltimore. I know they're 5-3, but they beat Buffalo, they beat Houston. They are going to be just fine. They also beat the Commanders. They didn't beat Houston yet. They probably will when they play, but they beat Buffalo, they beat the Commanders. They're gonna be fine. They beat Cincinnati. They've got the wins that they need. They're gonna keep winning. They're gonna win 10 or 11 games. They're probably gonna win the division. Although Pittsburgh looks good too. But let's not freak out on Baltimore. They're going to be okay. Like, this is not the end of the world. The world is not ending for the Baltimore Ravens, and I think it's important for everyone to keep that in mind when discussing Baltimore, because I've seen a lot of, are the Ravens even that good? Yes, they are. They could have won the game if they got an easy pick six. Kyle Hamilton dropped it. They're going to be fine. It's the Ravens. So the Rams beating the Vikings on Thursday Night Football. I predicted this would happen, and look, the Vikings, short week after playing Detroit. By the way, no team has won their game after playing the Lions. I'm not sure how much to read into that, but the Lions are beating up on teams badly. They're not a single team that has played the Lions and then won the next week. Even the Bucs, who beat the Lions, they lost the next week to Denver. They got destroyed at home by Denver. So yeah, the Lions are kind of that team right now, similar to what the Patriots used to do, the Chiefs, the Steelers, the 49ers. This year, that team is the Lions. You play them, you're going to lose not only to them, but you're probably going to lose the next week as well. That's just what they do. They manhandle you. So the Vikings, short week, just lost to the Lions in a bitter, really close game. Remember, the Vikings thought they won that game. They returned the fumble. And the Rams come in 2-4 against the 5-1 Vikings and win at home. And with their weapons back, they get Cooper Kupp back, Puka Nacua back, and all of a sudden Stafford looks like an MVP candidate again. 4 touchdowns, no picks. Stafford looks great. And what do you know? I've said it about Brock Purdy. It's unfair to judge a quarterback when he's missing both of his top receivers. Look, I feel like a broken record when I say this. Quarterbacks need weapons to succeed, right? Like, without weapons, what are they going to be able to do? There's only 2 quarterbacks in the league, Lamar and Mahomes, who have shown us that they can have success without good weapons. And even then, they both have good tight ends. They just haven't had really consistent receiver play. But Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce may be the best tight ends in football. So every quarterback needs a couple weapons. And I'm not saying that, receivers are more valuable than quarterbacks. They're not. But you need at least a couple guys to throw the ball to. So Stafford, with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua out, he looked terrible. He looked washed. He looked like he was for making bad throws, bad decisions. All of a sudden, he gets Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua back. He's back to being an MVP candidate. 4 touchdowns, no picks, upset win in Minnesota. Stafford, in his career, has played very well against Minnesota when he was with the Lions, so not a unfamiliar foe. And the Rams are back, and I do think they will win that division. I think that they are going to beat Seattle. I think they'll beat Arizona when they play in a rematch. I think they'll beat the 49ers again, and I think that they probably win that division with 9 wins, maybe 10, maybe even 8. I don't know. Nobody in that division's all that good right now. Arizona 4-4 is leading it, but yeah, Rams are a good team, and they showed that on Thursday, and the Vikings will be fine. They'll be fine. They get a Sunday night game against the Colts. They'll win that game. Joe Flacco starting for Richardson. The Vikings will win that game. They'll be 6-2. They'll probably beat the Bears. They might even beat the Lions next time they play. They were very close in that game against Detroit the first time, so they're going to be fine. They're going to make the playoffs. They're probably not going to win the division, but nobody really thought they were going to win that division. That division is the Lions' division to win. So yeah, the Vikings, I'm not worried about them. It was a Thursday night game, short week after a very emotional loss to Detroit. Bit of a letdown. And again, they were very close. Both of their losses have been close. Both of their losses have been to good teams. Losing at Los Angeles by what was it? They lost by 10. But they were in that game the whole time, really. So I'm not worried about Minnesota at all. All right, one more. Let's talk Bears Commanders. craziest ending of all time. I mean, the Bears, after playing pretty much, Bears were terrible all game. They come back, they score a touchdown, and here comes Washington. You have to, I mean, let's look at this. 5 seconds on the clock here, and it's 1st and 10. Dan Quinn thinking, am I really gonna lose to Chicago? Rookie quarterback. Bears are thinking, man, we're gonna be 5-2 with a win over Washington. Bears, remember, they haven't beaten a winning team yet. Their wins have come against the Jags, who are bad. They beat the Panthers, who are awful. They beat, who else did they beat? They beat a bunch of bad teams. They beat the Titans, who stink. And they beat the Rams, who are 3-4. So the Rams are probably their best win. Caleb's thinking, yep, I'm going to beat Jaden, my rival. And then watch what happens. 6 seconds left. And you can't see, but there's a Bears player. Okay, well, they blew coverage there. And what you're going to see now with 2 seconds on the clock is you're going to see a player downfield who is just arguing with his coach. And then he starts arguing with his fans. Washington thinks they've lost this game. They think they've lost. They think it's over for them. It's not. Spoiler alert. Look at him. So he's off to the corner. He's arguing with fans. Daniels takes the low snap. Just kind of diddling around, running around. Bears think they got him. The Bears think they got him. Look at this. Heaves it downfield, and it falls right into the hands of Noah Brown. I mean, what a play. And the guy who tipped it was the guy who was arguing with fans. Commanders win 18-15. Hail Mary, man. What a freaking Hail Mary that was. That's awesome. I feel like we need more of that in football. Bring back Hail Marys that they actually catch. So many times, like, teams are just throwing it out, Hail Marys, or they try to do the stupid little pitchy stuff. I don't want to see that. Give me some Hail Marys that they actually win. That's Aaron Rodgers-esque. That's Russell Wilson-esque. That's great. I love that. Go Commanders, man. 6-2. How about that? They're on top of the world.